The city had a way of luring in lost souls. It was a place where dreams collided with nightmares, and for many, it was impossible to tell one from the other. Mariana was one of those dreamers. Fresh out of a long-term relationship, she sought solace in the anonymity of the city, hoping to find herself in the chaos. Instead, she found him. He was unlike anyone she had ever met, charming, enigmatic, with an air of mystery that drew her in like a moth to a flame. They met by chance at a late-night cafe, the kind of place where shadows lingered just a little longer, and the air was thick with the scent of strong coffee and unspoken secrets. His name was Raphael. He had a smile that promised adventure and eyes that hinted at something darker, something hidden just beneath the surface. Mariana was captivated from the start. Their conversations were effortless, flowing like a river cutting through the silence of the night. He seemed to understand her in ways no one else ever had, and before she knew it, she was falling for him, falling fast. But there was something about Raphael that didn't quite add up. He was evasive about his past, always changing the subject when she asked too many questions. His stories never seemed to line up, and his mood could shift in an instant from warm and inviting to cold and distant. Yet, Mariana was too blinded by her feelings to see the warning signs. They spent more and more time together, their nights stretching into the early hours of the morning. Raphael would take her to places she had never been, secret spots in the city that felt like they belonged to another world. Abandoned buildings, hidden alleyways, and quiet parks where the trees whispered ancient tales. It was thrilling, intoxicating, and Mariana was hooked. But with every high came a low. Raphael's mood swings became more frequent, and his behavior more erratic. He would disappear for days without a word, leaving Mariana in a state of worry and confusion. When he finally returned, he would brush off her concerns with a kiss and a smile, his charm disarming her once again. Then one night, everything changed. It was a cold, rainy evening, and Mariana found herself waiting for Raphael at their usual spot, a small, dimly lit bar on the outskirts of the city. He was late, as usual, but this time, there was an edge to the night that made her uneasy. The bartender, a grizzled old man with a face carved by years of hard living, gave her a knowing look as he handed her another drink. "Be careful with that one," he muttered, his voice low and gravelly. There's something not right about him. Mariana wanted to dismiss his words, but there was a truth in them that she couldn't ignore. She had felt it too. The darkness that clung to Raphael like a shadow, the way his eyes would sometimes glaze over as if he was somewhere else, someone else. When Raphael finally arrived, he was different. His usually immaculate appearance was disheveled, his clothes wrinkled and stained with what looked like mud. Or was it something else? His eyes were wild, his smile a twisted version of the one she had fallen for. "Let's go," he said, grabbing her arm with a grip that was too tight, too insistent. "Raphael, what's going on?" she asked, trying to pull away, but he wouldn't let her. "We need to leave," he insisted, dragging her out into the rain. The cold droplets stung her skin, but it was nothing compared to the icy fear that gripped her heart. They drove in silence, the city lights blurring into streaks of color as Raphael sped through the streets. Mariana's mind raced with questions, but she was too scared to ask them. She could feel the tension in the air, thick and suffocating, and she knew that something terrible was about to happen. Raphael took them to an old, abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of town, a place he had never mentioned before. The building loomed before them, its dark windows like empty eyes staring into the void. "Why are we here?" Mariana whispered, her voice trembling. "There's something I need to show you," Raphael replied, his voice unnervingly calm. He led her inside, the air thick with the scent of decay and dust. The walls were covered in graffiti, the floor littered with broken glass and debris. But it wasn't the state of the building that terrified Mariana. It was the feeling that she was walking into a trap, that there was no way out. Raphael stopped in front of a large metal door at the far end of the warehouse. He turned to her, his eyes burning with an intensity that sent shivers down her spine. "Do you trust me?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. Mariana hesitated, her mind screaming at her to run. to get away from this place, from him. But her heart, foolish and desperate, wanted to believe that there was still something good in him, something worth saving. I don't know, she admitted, tears welling up in her eyes. Then let me show you, he said, pushing the door open. What Mariana saw inside would haunt her for the rest of her life. The room was dark, lit only by a single, flickering bulb hanging from the ceiling. In the center of the room was a large table, and on it, something was covered by a dirty, blood-stained sheet. The metallic smell of blood filled her nostrils, making her gag. "Raphael, what is this?" she asked, her voice shaking. "See for yourself," he replied, stepping back to give her a full view. With trembling hands, Mariana reached for the edge of the sheet and pulled it back. The sight that greeted her was worse than any nightmare she could have imagined. Lying on the table was the body of a woman, her lifeless eyes staring up at the ceiling. Her face was a twisted mask of terror, her skin pale and cold. But it was the wound on her chest, a deep, jagged gash, that made Mariana scream. The woman's heart had been ripped out. Mariana stumbled back, her mind reeling with horror. She turned to Raphael, who was watching her with a twisted smile on his face, his eyes gleaming with madness. "Now you know," he said, his voice eerily calm. "This is who I am." Mariana's world spun out of control as she realized the truth. Raphael was a monster, a psychopath who had lured her into his web of lies and deception. And now she was next. As she backed away, Raphael took a step toward her, his smile growing wider. "Don't be afraid, Mariana," he said, his voice dripping with false sweetness. "I only want to love you forever." But Mariana knew there was no love in him, only darkness and death. With every ounce of strength she had left, she turned and ran, her footsteps echoing through the empty warehouse. Raphael's laughter followed her, chilling her to the bone. She ran through the rain-soaked streets, her heart pounding in her chest, her mind filled with the image of the woman on the table. She had fallen for a psycho, and now she was paying the price. As the first light of dawn broke through the clouds, Mariana found herself at the edge of the city, her clothes soaked, her body trembling with fear. She had escaped for now, but she knew that Raphael was out there, somewhere, waiting for the right moment to strike again. And this time, she might not be so lucky.